Hello, everyone. I'm Ron Gerber, CEO of Angelbeat. So excited to be here with Luis Geraldo. He's with OutSystems, a really exciting, innovative firm who's spoken at many Angelbeat seminars to great positive response. The key benefit that so many Angelbeat attendees have told me about OutSystems, it's its ability to provide a low, no-code platform that provides this very powerful building block on your applications. And it touches on so many benefits because organizations, they're scared about how do I hire people? They don't want to be beholden to one programmer who knows how everything works on a mission critical app. What happens if that person gets sick or takes a new job? How do you deal with the shortfall of qualified people? And then just as importantly, how do you maintain these programs? And they really, I think, hit a sweet spot in terms of having this foundational AI-powered automated coding engine that provides so much robustness. And I always like to say, if you can program your iPhone or your Android device without having to ask your teenage kid what to do and figure out what your iPhone settings are, you can do incredibly powerful things. And I think if you look at the broader cloud computing world, which is why we're going to hear a little bit from Luis, I just want to set the stage, with so many of the cloud computing organizations, AWS, Microsoft, Google, starting to assume so much more of the infrastructure, the systems administration, the networking. Very few people are going to be involved in racking and stacking servers, switches, hubs in the future. The key value add is going to be developing applications, knowing how to take advantage of your data. Maybe, Luis, if you could just give a little background on yourself, a little top-level view of OutSystems, and maybe share some more details on why your customers are such big fans of OutSystems.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, so happy to. So Luis Geraldo, I run our business value consulting practice here in the Americas for OutSystems. Been here about just a little under 2 years.
Okay.
Been in technology for about 20 years in the consulting arm, and really started my career with kind of business process outsourcing around recurring revenue management, which when we started was really renewals and considered admin function, moving into more of actually a selling function. From there, I wanted to learn a little bit more about software, so I went to Oracle and spent another handful of years in SaaS, kind of looking at their range of products from digital marketing all the way through to to e-commerce. And then just in the last several years, I actually went into database. So I took a pretty deep dive into the stack and learned a little bit more about the wiring and the plumbing, as they say, and the importance of that. And now I'm here at OutSystems, which is really what we call modern application development. So at a high level, OutSystems has been around for a little while. It's a European-based company, so headquartered in Lisbon, Portugal.
Okay.
But we've had many customers for nearly 20 years since its inception in 2001. So we're seeing that there's longevity in the platform and stability in the platform. And what we're seeing, I think, at a high level from OutSystems, to your point, Ron, this is about a composable enterprise. This is about those building blocks and coexistence around your current technology stack, with the focus around building applications not only quickly, so your time to market is going to be addressed, but building them right, so you're driving quality assurance around that coding process and that development process, and then reusability of that, so you create essentially the flywheel effect of building for many and not just for one, so you're reducing your TCO and for the future. So enterprise grade is obviously an important aspect of this, which is there's a lot of low code, no code as they call it, right, platforms that are out there. And we're proud to be one of those few that can really drive economies of scale for many enterprises.
Got it. So if I'm, let's say, the head of software development in a major organization, and I'm struggling with hiring people, I might have acquired a company and they've got all these legacy systems, we're trying to do due diligence on this. They must love OutSystems, because once you start getting so many different things on the same block, once you build a pool of people who know that platform, suddenly you're less beholden to individuals and you could do much more with less. And I think it's especially relevant when, as you mentioned, OutSystems has been very successful in this space for pushing 20 years. There are lots of people out there who you don't necessarily want to be, let's say, a C# programmer. You want to be someone who's qualified in being an OutSystems expert. It's sort of like, instead, like, you probably don't need to hire a lot of these Oracle DBAs as much as you want to hire people. Oh, you worked in OutSystems before? That's got to be one of these key classifications or certifications that are going to be more and more relevant in the future.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a natural evolution to what we're seeing. So to your point, there is a talent deficit. And so everyone outside of the leading, cutting edge organizations that can recruit top talent and keep them there, everyone is fighting and competing for that talent. And then you couple that with just the digital economy around proliferation of applications and demands now moving to more a remote workforce and all these things that are, I think, accelerating that innovation cycle, frankly. And what I'm hearing is many clients are trying to figure out how they bring in platforms like ours to drive speed of that innovation while preserving talent, right, along the way, and servicing both their internal employee base as well as their ecosystem. So generally what I would say, Ron, is that everyone has a backlog of projects or applications. And what we see often is that you have to obviously go through that rationalization on your own to determine what are the needs and priorities of the business. But we can facilitate some of that and determine sort of where we can fit in that, right? Because this is not about consuming and taking over traditional development. This is about being a catalyst that is augmenting or complementing traditional development to drive speed and innovation. So.
Now, is there any sweet spot where OutSystems gets broader usage? Is it around your old world of databases? Is it on ERP? Is it custom consumer apps? Where's the real sweet spot when people, when they want to test this out, can identify a high priority department and really see a big ROI in a short period of time?
Yeah, it's a question we often get, and I think historically it's been difficult to tackle because we can support so many different application needs. But I would say some common themes that we see relative. We have to remember, OutSystems is a full stack application development platform, so you can leverage aspects of the data layer, the business logic layer, as well as the UI UX. But at its core, what we see for internal, let's say for a moment, applications, a lot of your traditional SaaS offerings where you look at maybe human capital management, so the whole onboarding, offboarding, payroll, recruiting is a very common place where there's a lot of inefficiencies and maybe gaps that you need to configure relative to your business and to your employee base that we can sort of, supplement, right, or coexist with your existing technology. So that's a big area from an internal perspective. I would say as well on kind of the back office. So it really ranges front to back office, but I would say even in the compliance and risk. So inefficiencies there, manual-based processes where we can drive a better connected enterprise or connected user experience, relative to specific processes that surface regulatory aspects. So those are two internal areas, and then externally, consumer-facing applications like banking as a service, telemedicine, to name a few, and really any portals such as agent portals for insurance. So those are some brief examples where we're seeing a mix of internal, focus on driving more automation across the enterprise, as well as consumer-facing applications in the form of portals or kind of customer lifecycle management.
Is another way to react to that is if you've got some critically important software applications that might have a high degree of customization or complexity that is rapidly changing because different employees, different HR requirements, different regulations. You as OutSystem, you're not asking people to do anything different. You like the package you're using, fine. You like the way it works. You're just going to be something that's almost invisible to the end user. And to the developer, you're just going to free up him or her or they to enable them to focus on really important things, the user experience, the application performance, and worry less about some more mundane stuff that's still critically important in the code, but may not be the best use of a programmer's limited time. Is that another fair way to look at it?
Yeah, I think you're touching on some of the core elements of the value proposition, right? Which is if you think about sort of your traditional ERP SaaS solutions, what we often see more often than not is we're kind of driving innovation on the edge. So we're more of an extensibility play. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is, like, you could have limitations, constraints with how you have your highly configured, customized ERP installation or CRM, and you're trying to drive a certain, like, contact center experience, or like I said earlier, it's, human capital management experience. Yeah. So that's where we see that, extend what we call extension, right, or refactor play, digital decoupling, where we're kind of the glue, for lack of better terms, of the blocks that kind of bring that together, both from an integration, but just as importantly, orchestration across that, with the app dev piece really as the kind of the last 20 yards to kind of get in the end zone. Is you need that consistent web mobile experience across those users, obviously, that are interacting with that process. So yes, I would say those are definitely what we see as common now. But on the other side, as far as the spectrum, we also see folks that are frankly challenging status quo of your traditional installations, where you have a high cost and maybe a return on investment that's 3, 4, 5 years out, that maybe you get 30, 40% of the way there. Well, those longer projects, they're all important, but we're seeing more of a focus on leveraging our platform and other technologies like microservices, containerization, to drive a more nimble stack, right, and be able to adjust to a lot of the competitive aspects that are out in the marketplace.
So you raise a good point when you talk about containers and modernization, microservices. Those are a lot of the buzzwords that the Sure. AWSs, the GCPs, the Microsofts, Azures of the world tout as part of the major benefits, while they're always encouraging end users to migrate their legacy apps to the cloud. Maybe you could describe how OutSystems plays and fits in alongside these three major cloud providers. So when I'm a CIO, head of software development, and I'm looking at my on-prem legacy software, and I'm going, I don't want to build another data center. I don't want to buy any more servers. I don't want to worry about the latest hurricane or weather disaster tying me to this physical building. I just want to have someone else deal with a lot of the issues. So when they go through that mindset and that decision making, where they're going to, and we talk with your old colleagues at Oracle when they're looking at potentially migrating their Oracle or other SAP to the cloud. How does OutSystems play in that discussion to accelerate that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a lot underneath that. I would say we see a big push, obviously a continued push, because it's been going on for a while of moving to the cloud. So there's a couple of areas that we see where OutSystems drives kind of benefit. So I think streamlining some of the infrastructure operations is going to be an area of kind of reducing costs of the administration and tuning and the diagnostics of that, as well as change management, so patching, provisioning. I would also look at thinking like the longer term lifecycle management costs of infrastructure, so storage and data management and utilization. So obviously the elimination of the hardware and storage and data center, as you mentioned, costs are important, but this is about trying to, I think, simplify and scale your infrastructure to support your resources, right? Almost as this, in it as a service model, right? And that's, I think, where we're seeing that now, depending on industry, depending upon back to what we're talking about, which is often people have a multi-cloud strategy. People are then looking at different use cases, and you factor that in with the different industries. I think our strategy at OutSystems is looking at sort of the hybrid approach, but looking at the near term versus the longer term aims of organizations to really drive what I would say is platform utilization across the enterprise. So
So you're going to complement the AWSs, obviously, or the Microsofts and the Google. They may have some of these baseline services, but you need, I would think one of the biggest benefits with OutSystems is that it provides you with a common platform that you can manage. So if you want to switch your Kubernetes powered containers from AWS to GCP or Azure to AWS, whatever it is, or potentially say, well, I want to run my own bare metals at a colo facility, the real value of OutSystems is, to use a somewhat overused term, it provides, in an analogous sense, a single pane of glass, a single management platform for controlling your software, regardless of the underlying cloud solution you choose. Is that again a reason?
Yeah. So I think that flexibility of deployment methods is crucial. And I think to your point, if we use AWS, who's a very strong partner of ours, as well as Azure, but AWS is where we've been kind of, we're further along in that relationship. Is, yeah, there's absolutely a better together story. So I would say, we kind of streamline a lot of the app development, and I think it does really kind of factor in sort of the horizon around how an organization is moving to the cloud. But yes, as far as sort of immediate value, we're seeing a lot of traction not only with the large cloud providers but also with the large GSI network, right? Where there's a big push to try to drive some consistency around app development and keeping the core clean, as they say, but driving more of that connected enterprise at scale, right, through our platform.
So I guess another point, because despite the tremendous growth of Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, there still is a great deal of on-prem computing, and and your platform, the OutSystems solution, is equally applicable, even if you decide, well, I'm going to run all my apps on-prem, right? I mean, you still have that tremendous value proposition, again, from software development, speed, consistency, manageability, all those good aspects.
Yeah, so I mean, we have our own private cloud that we can obviously support to offload some of those costs and help maintain that for customers. But to your point, we have many deployments both on-prem and in our customers' private or public cloud. So I think that flexibility is really, I think, ingrained with what I mentioned earlier. Coexistence is part of why this company and kind of what's been in the DNA of the company, since 2001. And so in order for us to do that, we obviously have to be flexible in how customers and partners are going to be deploying our platform in production.
So again, if I'm any one of these companies, I really want to have OutSystems be with me. If I'm Microsoft, Amazon, because you can help really accelerate all of the modernization, migration efforts that, I'm an AWS sales rep. I'm going to call up Luis. I'm going to say, hey, look, we're going to talk to a big bank. I want to get them off their mainframes and using the AWS cloud. I got to bring you in so we can do that even better and faster. I imagine there's a fair amount of that going on as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where we see sort of a lot of the growth and frankly the partnerships developing over time, right? Is how we drive that consumption-based model, right? And how do we have that better together story? Whether it, and we're seeing in this moving a lot too, in even a MSP or managed service offering, right? So there's also those options. When you think about a lot of what, not just the cloud providers, but also the partner ecosystem, what kind of gets me out of bed a lot is their revenue model is also shifting in that, the heavy consulting services are a part of the game around transformation and driving digital innovation, of course, right? Those are always going to be needed, but building now products, leveraging platform like OutSystems, where you can go quick to market, solve a specific need if that's what customers are looking for. Also, running on one of those cloud providers is it's kind of a win for everybody. So we see that also as a big growth opportunity increasing here in the future. So
that's great. So what is going to be the future? What are some of the big priorities for 2022, despite speaking at lots of Angelbeat events in the future?
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to, in full candor, the platform is very robust and has a lot of capabilities up and down the stack, as far as the components that can be leveraged, the integration, the DevOps, and obviously the UI UX element. So I think we've catered to largely a European and Asia Pacific market for many years, and then I would say the last handful of years we've focused more in the Americas. So we're seeing a lot of traction with a lot of large enterprises, and what we're finding more and more as me personally, as I'm having conversations with the C-suite and other business and technical leaders, is that they're starting to kind of surface some very specific areas where we play. So there's use cases, and there's always going to be use cases. But to give you an example, in which this was on one of the Angelbeat conversations we had within healthcare, is the whole concept of intelligent business process automation. So RPA is still a very, there's a high value proposition, but there's now what we're hearing from customers and partners is there's moving beyond just RPA into low code and also leveraging AI and ML in that it's not about just saving money. It's about really resiliency and driving kind of scale, both efficiencies internally as well as unlocking revenue bottlenecks. So I think that's one of the big plays we're going to see in 2022 to try to be, that's there's a lot underneath that, but I see that as a big push because I hear it every day from the large banks and large healthcare institutions that they've got these massive ecosystems that they're trying to rationalize. So how do you start to deliver value back to the business and to your customers and patients and your supplier ecosystem quickly? So that's where we're kind of seeing a big push is how do you automate, but also how do you drive resiliency in the future? And then I think the last one is the extensibility play. So we're starting to see more themes like with ERP, as you mentioned earlier. So be it SAP, Oracle, as just to name two, how do we leverage those investments further? And I do think it is about coexistence. So thinking about, depending on how you've deployed that, that instance within your own respective organization, is there an option for us to kind of, again, build those building blocks to help drive a better experience and ultimately more throughput from your app dev teams?
It sounds like you're right there at the sweet spot of cloud adoption, everyone rethinking their applications, their legacy systems, everyone worried about finding the right coders in the future, everyone concerned about these legacy mission critical systems that are dependent on too few people. And it seems like OutSystems has thread the needle to try and address a lot of those questions, a lot of those issues. Hey, I've got one last question. Do people ever get certified on OutSystems as any qualification, like an Oracle certified DBA? Yeah. Just curious.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, absolutely. We have a certification process, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but there's a pretty significant sized community out there. Okay. And so I think that's, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of a natural resistance, right? Because change is always going to cause a bit of resistance, where we have many developers that are schooled on their traditional coding languages for the last 20 years. So I think we'll see a continued push there as this inflection point to talent crunch. Plus, it's like legacy. When we said, legacy is going away, well, legacy is going to be around here for a long time. Traditional coding is going to be around here for a long time, but the percentage of application development that's going to be going on low code platforms like ours is going to just steadily increase. So is it 65% of app dev? We'll see. Even if it's 50, right? That means that's going to be a push around certification on platforms like us. So we'll see a spike in that, I think, in the subsequent 2 or 3 years. So.
Well, I think that's why I personally, as the person setting up our agendas, love having you and your OutSystems colleagues speak, because this is not bleeding edge. It's very much leading edge, and it's very much relevant today. People need to start adopting this approach because if you want to succeed, you want to get promoted, you want to make more money. I mean, I'm certain that the organizations who adopted OutSystems 2 years ago before COVID, they were probably better positioned to respond to this unprecedented demand in changing computing infrastructure than those organizations that didn't. I'm sure you got lots of calls from clients and customers who you talked to 2 years ago, and they said, well, I'll think about it, come back to me. And then right around March and April of 2020, when everything, like the world collapsed, so to speak, they're probably scrambling saying, oh, Luis, how do we get this low code in place? How do we do it? We got to work faster. I'm sure that your clients were the ones who did very well. I will just tell you, and as we conclude this, I'll tell you a story from an Angelbeat seminar. For those programmers who might be watching this, I'll give you an analogous story. We were talking, this must have been like 12, 13 years ago. We were doing an Angelbeat seminar, and that was the first time that you really started deploying a lot of VDI, thin client, centrally managed desktops. And there was one gentleman in Florida who's been attending our Angelbeat events for years, and his job was like, I'm the one who knows every Tuesday. I walk around to every desktop, I get it running, I know all the users, I know exactly the quirks. And then he went to an Angelbeat seminar, and we had a company similar to OutSystems talking all about centrally managed endpoints, thin client architecture, cost efficiencies, greater security, ease of administration when you're doing this. And he went there and he said, well, I thought I had job security because I was the only one who knew how to really do these daily or weekly or monthly updates. And then he realized it, and he sent me like the best email I've ever gotten, how Angelbeat saved his career and got him promoted, because he suddenly realized, if I keep doing this, I'm going to be out of a job, because you can't be the person who thinks his or her career or their career is maintained because I'm just walking around doing what I'm doing today. All of you out there need to embrace the OutSystems, because it's going to be happening, and you want to make sure, like all programmers are techie, they always want to get the new code. And even if it might put you out of the comfort zone, it will make you incredibly more valuable to your boss, get you promoted, get you making more money. That, I think that's as much of an incentive as anything for making sure you embrace the whole low no code movement.
Yeah, and I think it's I'll end on this note. I think it's integrating that. I always view this as, where's the maturity of the market, right? There's time that folks have to kind of understand relative to their digital maturity, how much they can take on of this type of rapid application development, because it does change the operating model. Now, that being said, experimentation, right, is important to look at how it could affect your ability to, at the end, we're talking about is delivering outcomes, right? So whatever app project that you're focused in on, what we're seeing is that the IT becomes the leading kind of innovator with the business, versus the business viewing IT as the bottleneck, right? And so that shift is empowering for all those that are, in IT. And I think that's what I would leave the developer community with, even though I'm not a developer, is that is it more important for you to solve the problems that your organization is trying to deliver to its employees and to its consumer base, or for you to be maintaining existing systems? Because that's the other area, which is we see a lot of developers wanting to solve problems with innovative solutions versus spending 60% of their time maintaining and just keeping the lights on. So it's always a balancing act, but it is that is the question I get a lot. How do we bring this into our organization, and how do we consume this and govern it in the right way so it doesn't compound what we have already, right?
Yeah. Well, I encourage everyone to take a look at outsystems.com. You can go to the angelbeat.com website to watch videos like this. You can always contact me. We'll put you in touch with Luis if you're interested in trying to determine which software I should use to potentially migrate and modernize using OutSystems. I'm sure Luis and his team can help identify those business functions, those departments that offer the greatest ROI and the greatest short-term benefits before you do a wider deployment. That's about it. Love talking to experts. I feel smarter. And we look forward to seeing individuals at our Angelbeat virtual seminars and our live seminars in the very near future. Thanks so much for your time, Luis.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, Ron.
Great. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.